One thing I always found interesting is gym equipment. While some of it is great, some of it looks impressive until you actually use it. Then the movement feels awkward, the resistance feels strange, and the whole thing pretty much falls apart. So when MotionSpace reached out and sent me the G1 Pro, I was curious. Not because it has a touch screen, not because it's digital. Honestly, I don't really care about any of that. What I care about is tension, how the resistance feels. Does it stay loaded throughout the movement? And can it create the kind of muscular fatigue that actually stimulates muscle growth? Because at the end of the day, muscles don't respond to technology, they respond to resistance. And if the resistance is the right one, none of that actually matters. So for the last several days, I've been integrating the G1 Pro into my actual training environment right here in my office. I've been experimenting with the different modes, trying different exercises, playing with the eccentric settings, and seeing whether this compact system actually has something useful to offer from a high-intensity training perspective. And honestly, a few things immediately stood out to me. Let's take a closer look. One thing I appreciated immediately was how compact the entire system is. For something that can perform this many movements, the footprint is surprisingly small. Setup was straightforward. Stand it up, lower the platform, attach the accessories, and you're ready to start training. For anyone working with limited space, that's a major advantage. Now, what makes this machine different is that it doesn't use traditional weight stacks. Instead, it uses digitally controlled magnetic resistance. And honestly, that's what interests me the most. Not because it's high-tech, but because it allows the resistance itself to behave differently during the entire exercise. And from a training standpoint, that's where things start becoming very interesting. The feature that immediately got my attention was the eccentric mode. The machine allows different resistance between the lifting and lowering portions of the repetition. As many of you know, I've always believed that the negative portion of any exercise is extremely important. So being able to manipulate that portion of the movement independently is very interesting. I'm still experimenting with the different ratios, but so far, this has probably been the feature I've spent most of the time with. One movement that immediately stood out to me was the seated lateral raise. This movement feels surprisingly smooth. The resistance remains consistent. The tension stays on the deltoids. And that's important because lateral raises expose weak equipment very quickly. If the resistance isn't right, you know it almost immediately. So far, this has been one of my favorite exercises on the machine. Rows have also been very impressive so far. The resistance feels smooth throughout the entire movement. There's no sudden jerking, no awkward transition points. You can focus on contracting the target muscles instead of fighting the equipment. That's something I really appreciate. One thing I also like is how easy it is to transition between exercises. For example, I can move directly from a pullover into a chin-up without having to walk across the gym looking for another station or waiting for equipment to become available. Everything is right here in front of me. And from a high-intensity training perspective, that's something I really truly appreciate. The pullover itself feels very smooth, and having the ability to immediately move into a chin-up variation creates a very efficient training environment. It's a small detail, but it's one of those things that make the overall experience feel much more practical and enjoyable. One area where the machine really started to grow on me was biceps and triceps training. The first thing I noticed was how smooth the resistance felt. There seems to be very little friction in the system itself, which allows you to focus on the muscle rather than the machine. Both curls and tricep extensions felt very natural. The resistance stays consistent throughout the movement. That makes it easy to concentrate on controlled repetitions and slower negatives. So far, arm training has definitely been one of the stronger aspects of the system. One lower body movement I've really enjoyed in the G1 Pro is the belt squat variation. I always like belt squats because they allow you to train the legs hard without placing additional loading on the lower back. And honestly, if I have options of doing a belt squat, that's usually the direction I'm going to go. What stood out to me here was how smooth the resistance felt throughout the entire movement. The tension remained very consistent, especially during the lowering portion of the rep. And combined with the compact nature of the machine, it ended up being a surprisingly enjoyable way to train legs. No, not every machine is perfect, but if I had to point out to one limitation so far, it would probably be the fly variation. The resistance feels great, but because the machine is designed to be compact, the cables aren't quite as wide as a full commercial crossover station. As a result, the movement feels a little different than a dedicated pec deck or cable crossover. That said, it's still much better than I expected. It's absolutely usable, and with some adjustments in positioning, I was still able to get a very respectable chest contraction. For me, it's not a deal breaker at all. It's simply one area I'll continue experimenting with as I spend more time with the machine. Another thing worth mentioning is the variety of accessories and features that come with the system. One feature I found particularly interesting is the Bluetooth controller. It allows you to adjust the resistance remotely without having to constantly interact with the touchscreen itself. It's a simple idea, but it's a nice addition to the overall experience. The system also includes a variety of attachments that expand the number of exercises you can perform. And the more time I spend with the machine, the more exercise possibilities I continue to discover. For a machine with such a compact footprint, MotionSpace has done a very good job creating a system that is both versatile and practical. So far, my initial experience with the MotionSpace G1 Pro has been very positive. The smoothness of the resistance has stood out, and I'm telling you guys, I've never ever experienced a machine that smooth. The Eccentric mode has been extremely interesting, and the ability to have a complete training system sitting right here in my office is something I'm already appreciating. But this is not my final review, so I'm still going to be testing it. I'm still experimenting with the different modes, and I'm still learning where its greatest strength and limitations really are. So rather than rushing to a final verdict, I'm going to continue training on it. Continue experimenting with the different modes and exercises, and continue putting it through a real world workout. This video is simply my first impression.